Welcome to DisInfoNation. I'm Richard Metzger. Everything you know is wrong, or at least most of it is. Has a powerful secret society dating back to the dawn of civilization meticulously transformed reality itself into a vast conspiracy designed to impose mechanical consciousness on all mankind? Is the plot of the X-Files actually true? And what's with all this eye in the triangle stuff? On tonight's show, I'll visit the father of conspiracy culture, iconoclast icon and underground legend, author Robert Anton Wilson, and ask him a few pointed questions about secret societies, Bill Clinton's conspiracy connection, the 23 Enigma, and bogus rumors being spread in the mass media about Timothy Leary being an FBI stool pigeon. All this and a lot more, next on DisInfoNation.
Burger, fries, there's never been a better time to buy.
Your living room is the factory. The product being manufactured is you.
Burger, fries,
You have studied the Illuminati for years. Have you come to any conclusions about their aims?
Usually when people ask me that question, I give them some kind of a put-on. But I can't think of a good and original put-on that I haven't done several times before. So I'll tell you the truth for once. I think the Illuminati was a short-lived society of free thinkers and democratic reformers that formed a secret society within Freemasonry, using Freemasonry as a cover so they could plot to overthrow all the kings in Europe and the Pope. And I'm very happy that they succeeded in overthrowing all the kings. I wish they had completed the job and got rid of the royal family in England too, but they did pretty well on the continent. And I'm sorry they haven't finished off the Pope yet, but I think they're still working on the project and I wish them luck.
What is your feeling about the fact that the Kansas school boards have denigrated the teaching of Darwin's theories in high schools?
Well, we need a source of cheap labor. The third world doesn't provide all we need. We need people who speak English right away to start with for some of the remedial labor. You have an educational system that is a total, complete joke and a failure. Then that's where we get the people who clean the toilets and mop and clean up the streets and so on. Kansas is going to provide us with that. I think it's very gallant of them, and I really appreciate their offer. So I'm all for Kansas. Goodness, Toto, I don't think we're in Kansas anymore, though.
With something like the X-Files or Art Bell's conspiracy radio show becoming so popular in the American culture, conspiracy theory obviously is being talked about everywhere, and people are not trusting the government or the media or this and that. On the other hand, they believe anything.
Well, I blame that on the churches and the ignorance of the public at large. The major thing you should learn in any decent education is how to judge and evaluate news sources of information. If I say to you, the people in the next apartment are all zebra striped and they fly around 3 feet above the ground, how are you going to judge and evaluate that? Well, there are all sorts of, one way of, what does it sound plausible to you, and other ways, how honest do you think I am? And there are lots of other ways, but most people have no standards of evaluation at all to judge between something that's plausible, something that's totally impossible, something that's possible but not probable, something that's probable but not yet proven. They don't have those distinctions because any teacher in the United States, and I think in most Christian countries, any teacher who's caught trying to teach children how to judge statements, immediately the whole school board, all the parents, and especially the local clergy come down on his case, and he or she gets fired, thrown out on their ass, has to find work in another field. You can't teach children to think. It's against the law. So of course nobody has any standards how to judge whether Martians are in the White House or General Motors owns the president, or whether there are fetuses of extraterrestrials at Fort Bragg, or They have no standards by which to judge, so they judge by whoever they heard speak most recently. Oh, that must be the truth. I just heard it 5 minutes ago. They don't have an attention span that goes more than 10 minutes. And that's because they've never been taught how to use their brains. I used to advertise my seminars as how to use your brain for fun and profit. Most people don't even know how to use it for fun, much less than how to use it for profit.
When they changed the $20 bill, a friend of mine remarked that it looked like a coupon, and it made me think how abstract money really is. It's no longer a certificate that you could redeem for its value in silver or in gold. It's just some kind of arbitrary credit that you have in your bank account. Obviously, there's a sort of a belief in the monetary system that keeps it afloat. What would happen if everybody just stopped believing in money?
If everybody went to the bank and took out their money, the whole damn system would collapse, because the banks are allowed by law to loan 8 times as much as they have on deposit. That's considered safe because it's unlikely that everybody will go in and take their money out all at once. Actually, according to Penny Larno in a very good book on modern banking called In Banks We Trust, they habitually loan more than 8 times what they've got on deposit, a hell of a lot more than 8 times. When the SEC catches them, they get fined, and the case is not publicized, not just because the bankers own the government, but because if they did publicize it, it might start a run on the banks and the whole system would fall down like it did in the 1930s. It's very strange, but these pieces of paper that people have so much faith in, if you read them very carefully, they're not promising to give you anything. They used to. When I was young, every dollar bill said on it you could redeem it in silver on demand. Now it just says that it's legal tender for all debts, which means you can't exchange it for anything but more paper. If people lost faith in the paper, the whole system would fall apart. Money in the modern world is just pure information. It's as abstract as information in cybernetic theory. Which brings up the question, how come people get to charge interest on distributing information? Ezra Pound said we're living in a usurocracy. That is a system dominated by usury. And it sure does look that way, especially when you realize that we're paying interest on money that doesn't exist except by some kind of social convention. I often ask in my workshops, I get the whole audience involved, I ask them, what's the difference between a counterfeit dollar bill and a real dollar bill? And eventually it comes down to, we got to have faith that the Federal Reserve has a magic wand, and when they print paper, they pass the magic wand over it, it becomes money. When the mafia prints paper in a cellar, they don't have the magic wand, so it's not real money. How does the Federal Reserve get away with this swindle and nobody ever suspects it?
When he accepted the presidential nomination at the Democratic Convention in 1991, Bill Clinton thanked his mentor at Georgetown University, Professor Carroll Quigley. And all around the country, far-right conspiracy researchers saw their jaws drop to the floor. Why was that?
He must have known what he was doing. Sometimes I think Bill Clinton has more of a sense of humor than we realize. He knew that was going to set off buzzes. For the benefit of those who are not familiar with right-wing conspiracy theory in this country, Carroll Quigley is a historian who wrote a book called Tragedy and Hope, in which he admitted he had access to the private papers of what he regarded as the biggest conspiracy in the world at his time. He thought it was a benevolent conspiracy, and he wanted to show the world how much good they had done. This was the conspiracy that connected the American Council on Foreign Relations with the British Royal Institute of International Affairs, and it was largely financed by British and American banks, and it's largely staffed the upper positions of the governments of the United States and England since about 1900, more or less, 1914, somewhere around there. And the right wing loves Quigley's book because of the admissions he makes about the power of this group. The funny thing is, one of my favorite conspiracy groups, A.L. Bionic in Ferndale, Michigan, they claim that since Quigley taught at a Jesuit college, that's Georgetown University in Washington, he taught at a Jesuit, he must have been an agent of the Jesuit conspiracy, which is opposed to the conspiracy of these British and American bankers. So his real job was not to just reveal the secrets of the bankers' conspiracy, but to do it in the way that would do the most damage to the bankers. He was actually an agent of the Jesuits. So according to A.L. Bionic, Bill Clinton, in praising Carroll Quigley, was not showing his affiliation with the international bankers. He was showing his affiliation with the Jesuits, the Knights of Malta, and the whole Vatican conspiracy. So I think Bill did it because he has a sense of humor. He likes seeing all the conspiracy nuts going off at once.
Bob, why is the millennium significant? Or is it?
Well, which millennium are you talking about? On the Gregorian calendar, we're approaching a millennium. On the Jewish calendar, the millennium is a couple of hundred years away. In the Mayan calendar, we got about 900 years to the next millennium. In the pataphysical calendar, we got over 900 years to the next millennium. So it depends on which calendar you're using. I personally prefer the Discordian calendar, in which this is the year 3165, so we got 835 years to go to our millennium. I think the idea that there's one millennium, the millennium, it just shows the tremendous influence that Pope Gregory still has all these years after his death. The idea that the Gregorian calendar is the one true calendar, that makes people who believe it unconscious papists. I wonder how many of the fundamentalists who are worrying about the millennium realize it's the Pope's millennium they're worrying about. It's the Pope's calendar, Pope Gregory the 13th. I don't pay much attention to the popes or their calendars.
Who is God? Well, it's an invisible person and he lives up in heaven.
How much longer do you see Christianity lasting?
I wrote 3 historical novels in the 1980s, and one of the most disillusioning things I found out was that Voltaire, that paragon of reason and skepticism and caution, Voltaire had a period in which he thought the Catholic Church would be gone in 20 years. That was after they dissolved the Jesuits. Later they allowed the Jesuit order to reform, but when they dissolved the Jesuits, he wrote an ecstatic letter saying the Catholic Church is falling apart, it will be gone in 20 years. Considering how persistent the Christian virus has been, I don't see any hope of eliminating it in the near future. I just hope for more and more amelioration, like the First Amendment over here and the similar laws in other advanced industrial nations which prevent the Christians from burning us at the stake, which they would do again. The minute they had the freedom to do it, they would do it, you know. As Nietzsche said, it's not their love for us that keeps them from burning us at the stake anymore. It's the impotence of their love. They don't have the power to burn us at the stake. But if they could save our souls by burning us at the stake, don't you think our souls are worth more than our bodies? They'd burn us at the stake again as soon as they had the right to do it. So as long as we have some protection, that much protection against them, the virus will go on raging indefinitely, I suppose.
Recently, the story that Timothy Leary was an FBI snitch has been reported in the Associated Press, on the BBC, and on the SmokingGun.com website. And I was wondering if you could comment on that.
The way I understand it, and I was fairly close to Tim, he tried to persuade the FBI he was giving them valuable information. And the FBI finally decided he wasn't giving them enough valuable information, so they threw him back in the can and he served 2 more years. This was well known at the time. Everybody was afraid they were going to get busted. I don't know anybody that got busted because of Tim's testimony. He didn't tell the FBI a damn thing that hurt anybody. He was negotiating with them and he didn't get away with it. He lost. The FBI got wise that he wasn't telling them anything important and he served more time. They actually put him, they gave him the reputation of a snitch, hoping he'd get killed because they wanted to get rid of him. But the important issue to me is not that, but how did he get in prison in the first place? Timothy Leary went to prison to warn other scientists not to do research in that area. The government outlawed research on LSD as a behavior change agent in 1966. They threw Timothy in jail in 1970, so every scientist in the country would know they really meant business. They wanted to close down that area of research, at least public research. The CIA was doing research on that before, and probably they continued it afterwards. But they didn't want the research known to the public, they didn't want it published, and they didn't want it scientifically refereed, because the CIA discovered they could fuck people's heads up real bad with LSD. Timothy discovered the opposite, that with the proper set and setting, you can change almost any behavior pattern that somebody has and wants to get rid of and doesn't know how to get rid of. I think his research tended to indicate, and a lot of other research at the same time before it was all forbidden, that any bad habit, compulsion, neuroses, whatever you want to call it, anything you want to get rid of and you don't know how, you can get rid of quicker using LSD therapy than any other form of therapy. And the government claims they outlawed that to protect us. Now, the government claims to be so eager to protect us, they were submitting soldiers and civilians, too, we recently found out, to radiation experiments, which gave them cancer and other horrible diseases. They were still continuing the Tuskegee Project, in which black men with syphilis were observed regularly but not treated to find out how the syphilis would spread through their families and their communities and so on. It was treating them like guinea pigs because they weren't white. And this was still going on when they threw Leary in jail. The media never refers to why Leary went to prison. The judge who sentenced him to 37 years said his ideas were dangerous. That's why the Swiss gave him asylum as a political refugee, because he was condemned for his ideas. Nobody in this country, they think he was condemned for dealing drugs. He was condemned actually for being in possession of half a joint which he claims the cop planted on him. What you think of that depends on whether you trust Timothy Leary more than you trust an Orange County cop, or you trust an Orange County cop more than you trust Timothy Leary. I personally, in that case, don't think Timothy Leary was dumb enough to go to Orange County with a joint in his pocket. I think the cop did plant it on him. But whatever you think, 37 years is abnormal at a time when the penalty for possessing a half a joint was 6 months. And when they set his bail at $5 million higher than they've ever set on any murderer in American history, I think it's pretty obvious the Swiss were right. He was being persecuted politically for spreading ideas the government didn't like. This is a civil liberties issue that people should be concerned about, because it doesn't just involve Timothy Leary. It involves thousands of scientists who know about that research and would like to replicate it. And sometimes they do replicate it, but they only spread the results by word of mouth with their friends. They're afraid to publish it. This is the worst violation of scientific freedom since the Holy Inquisition, and nobody in the mass media will admit there's an issue there at all. They can't see it, they won't see it, and they won't let anybody talk about it. It's amazing.
Why is Aleister Crowley still important?
Crowley was the first writer of so-called New Age or mystical or occult tendency that I ever took seriously. I took him seriously because he had such a great sense of humor. I figured somebody this funny must have something, he must be saying something behind all these jokes. So I started studying him, and I found he did have a lot important to say, and I value him highly. I think relativity is one of the most important ideas of the 20th century. Einstein gave us physical relativity. Joyce gave us artistic relativity by telling Ulysses in 100 different narrative voices instead of just the one allegedly objective, detached observer of 19th century fiction. And Crowley did the same thing for the mystical occult world with his law of Thelema, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, which fills every moron in the world with terror, anxiety, paranoia, and general discombobulation. It's okay to say, do what I will shall be the whole of the law. Every religious teacher in history has said that. Nobody minds. Yes, yes, tell us what to do. Tell us what to do. Yes, master. When we kiss your feet, master. But if you say, do what thou wilt, what, you're giving me the responsibility? I can't take on that responsibility. You tell me what to do. I think people who were looking for... I've defined a disciple as an asshole looking for a human being to attach itself to. The Crowley system does not have any disciples. It doesn't tell you what to do. It tells you to decide for yourself what to do. I think it's the most libertarian philosophy to ever arise out of the mystical, whatever it is, the mystical mishmash.
What is the 23 Enigma?
Well, the 23 Enigma, did I start to sound a little like Burroughs then? I thought I did. Well, the 23 Enigma, Burroughs told me about the 23 Enigma back around 65. He had observed a lot of coincidences connected with the number 23. And as soon as he told me that, I started noticing coincidences involving the number 23. I put a lot of them into the Illuminati novels, and I put a bunch of them into the first of my Cosmic Trigger trilogy. And ever since then, I've been getting letters from people who've observed odd 23s. And there's no end to it. I'll tell you a very amusing anecdote. I was in St. Louis giving a lecture, and a guy came up after the lecture with his wife and said, I figured out how your 23 gimmick works. And I said, oh, tell me. And he said, it's a neurological grid. You make your readers very conscious of 23, more conscious than they are of the other numbers. And I said, congratulations, you found the great magician who makes the grass green. That's a sign of enlightenment in Zen. Which I thought was an adequate answer. Then a little while later, it turned out we went out to have a pizza together, he and his wife and me. And one of those places where you get a number while you wait for your pizza, and of course we got number 23. And he said to me, "How do you do it?" And I said, "I thought you did it that time." And I suppose he's still wondering about that. Well, so am I. It just happens, that's all. That's the enigma. Why does it keep happening? And neurological grid is part of it, but that's not all of it.
If you were elected president, what's the first thing you would do?
Resign.
Tune in, turn on, and boot up. It's the DisInfoMercial web review segment. First off, check out Slinky French Sex Kit and Rebecca Lord's new high-tech porn palace, RebeccaLord.com. It's one of our favorite internet sleaze sites, aside from the fact that she programs it herself, for her unintentionally funny movie reviews, which are written in this kind of English. Lord also performs several times a week live on the internet with a down-and-dirty closed-circuit strip show, costing her slobbering fans a mere $69 a pop. Or something like that. Rebecca Lord reminds us of a character taken straight out of The Invisibles. Comic bard Grant Morrison's classic underground series takes graphic storytelling deep into the new millennium with a mind-blowing plotline that makes X-Files look very tame in comparison. Time travel, the apocalypse, secret societies, chaos magic, and transvestite voodoo priestesses are just a few of the elements you'll find in the pages of The Invisibles. And if you've missed a few issues, La Bombe, a well-designed fan site, can help you catch up before it's too late. Plot lines, character bios, and cover art make this site a must for anyone following what we think is the best comic around, The Invisibles.
Ladies and gentlemen, half of the lies they tell about me are not true. The only truth is my long life is about to end, and my long death about to begin. As long as there is death, there is hope. All our great spiritual leaders are dead. Moses is dead, Muhammad is dead, Buddha is dead, and I am not feeling so hot myself. Doctors? No, no doctors. Doctors are quacks. In the good hospitals, they let you die. In the bad hospitals, they kill you. They won't kill me. Tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. near West 76th Street, I shall throw myself into the Hudson, and shortly thereafter I shall reappear on the coast of New Jersey as a white swan. It will be a miracle, and there will be dancing in the streets. The establishment hushes it up. Of course. Of course.
When someone claims to be a UFO contactee, whether they can channel space aliens, why is it that the information that these beings impart always seems to be so banal, so trivial?
Well, I wondered about that a lot, and I think that's because what they're channeling is another part of their own brain, and they have pretty banal brains. Most of it sounds like Hallmark greeting cards, which is why I don't believe it's coming from outer space. I think anybody who has a technology advanced enough to either come here in spaceships or transmit information here by means we don't understand would have something better to say than peace is better than war, or good is better than evil because it's nicer, or things like that.
You should live green.
Yeah.